The antiseptic smell of the hospital corridor burned my nostrils as I pushed the medication cart down the hallway, my sneakers squeaking against the polished linoleum. It was 3 a.m, and the fluorescent lights above buzzed with that particular frequency that made my exhaustion feel heavier, like a physical weight pressing down on my shoulders. I'd been on my feet for 11 hours straight, my lower back screaming in protest with every step, but I couldn't afford to slow down. Not when I needed every extra shift I could get. My fingers trembled slightly as I checked the patient charts, the words blurring together. Mrs. Chen in 304 needed her blood pressure medication. Mr. Rodriguez in 307 was due for his insulin. The routine was mechanical, my body moving on autopilot while my mind wandered to darker places. To the stack of bills on my kitchen counter. To the eviction notice that had arrived last week. To the daughter I hadn't seen in 3 days because of these back-to-back shifts. I stopped at the nurse's station to log the medication rounds, and that's when I heard it, the elevator chiming at the end of the hall. Nothing unusual about that, except it was the executive elevator, the one that required a special key card and only went to the VIP wing on the top floor, the one that regular staff like me weren't supposed to even look at. The doors slid open with a whisper of expensive machinery, and my breath caught in my throat. 3 men stepped out first, and they weren't wearing hospital scrubs or white coats. These men wore tailored black suits that probably cost more than I made in 6 months, their eyes scanning the corridor with the methodical precision of security cameras. They moved like predators, all controlled power and coiled violence, and something primal in me recognized danger when I saw it. Then he emerged. I don't know what made me look up. Maybe it was the sudden shift in the air pressure, or maybe it was the way everyone else in the hallway seemed to instinctively shrink back. But I looked up, and I forgot how to breathe. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with shoulders that filled out his charcoal suit in a way that suggested power barely contained. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and aristocratic lines, with a jaw that looked like it had never known softness. But it was his eyes that trapped me, dark and fathomless, scanning the hospital corridor with an intensity that made me feel like he was cataloging every detail, every weakness, every threat. The scent reached me even from 20 feet away, expensive cologne mixed with something darker, like leather and smoke and danger. It cut through the hospital's sterile smell like a knife through silk. I quickly looked down at my charts, my heart hammering against my ribs. Don't stare, don't draw attention. Don't. Excuse me. The voice was deep, cultured, with an accent that spoke of old money and older power. It rolled over me like warm honey laced with poison, and I realized with growing horror that he was speaking to me. I looked up slowly, meeting those dark eyes, and felt the world tilt slightly on its axis. Yes? My voice came out smaller than I intended, barely above a whisper. He took a step closer, and his security detail moved with him like synchronized shadows. Up close, I could see the fine weave of his suit, the platinum watch on his wrist that probably cost more than my car, the way his presence seemed to fill all the available space and demand more. I'm looking for the intensive care unit, he said, his gaze never leaving my face. Private suite 1201. Top floor, I managed, pointing toward the executive elevator he'd just exited. But that's the VIP wing. You'll need... I have clearance. He produced a black card from his breast pocket, and I caught a glimpse of gold lettering I couldn't quite read. Can you show me the way? It wasn't really a question. The way he said it made it clear that refusal wasn't an option, even though every instinct I had was screaming at me to run in the opposite direction. I'm not assigned to that floor, I said, clutching the medication chart to my chest like a shield. I'm sure one of the VIP nurses can... I'm asking you. 3 words, spoken quietly, but they carried the weight of absolute authority. This was a man who was used to being obeyed, who had probably never heard the word no in his entire life. And the way he was looking at me, with that dark, unreadable intensity, made me feel like a butterfly pinned to a board. I swallowed hard. Of course, this way. I led them to the elevator, acutely aware of his presence behind me, of the way his security detail moved in perfect formation, of the way other staff members seemed to materialize out of nowhere and then quickly disappear when they saw who was in the corridor. The head nurse, Maria, shot me a wide-eyed look from the nurse's station, her expression a mixture of concern and confusion. Inside the elevator, the space felt impossibly small. He stood close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, could smell that intoxicating scent of expensive cologne and danger. One of his guards pressed the button for the top floor, and the doors slid closed with a soft hiss that sounded like a trap snapping shut. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice cutting through the silence. "Emma." I kept my eyes fixed on the digital display above the doors. Floor 3, Floor 4, Emma Walsh. Emma. The way he said it, slow and deliberate, made it sound like something precious. "How long have you worked here?" 2 years. Floor 5. Floor 6. Why was this elevator so slow? "I'm just a nurse, nothing special." I doubt that. I made the mistake of glancing at him and found him watching me with an expression I couldn't decipher. There was something in his eyes, interest maybe, or calculation, or something darker that made my pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with a different kind of danger. The elevator chimed, and the doors opened onto a floor I'd only seen once during orientation. The VIP wing was a different world. Plush carpeting instead of linoleum, artwork on the walls, private suites instead of shared rooms. This was where the wealthy came to suffer in comfort, where discretion was purchased along with premium medical care. I led him down the hushed corridor to Suite 1201, my hands shaking slightly as I checked the door number. "Here you are, Mr. Nikolai." He stepped closer, and I found myself backed against the wall beside the door, trapped between his body and the expensive wallpaper. He wasn't touching me, but he didn't need to. His presence alone was enough to make me feel caged. Nikolai Volkov. The name rang a distant bell, something I'd heard whispered in the break room, or caught in snatches of news reports I was too tired to fully process. Something about organized crime, about a family that ran the city from the shadows, about a man who was as dangerous as he was, powerful. "I should get back to my rounds," I said, trying to edge sideways. But there was nowhere to go. "You're afraid." It wasn't a question, and there was something almost like amusement in his voice. "Smart girl, you should be." Before I could respond, the door to Suite 1201 opened, and a doctor I didn't recognize appeared, an older man with silver hair and an expensive suit that marked him as private, not hospital staff. "Mr. Volkov, we've been waiting." The doctor stopped when he saw me, his eyes widening slightly. "I see you found your way. Emma was kind enough to escort me." Nikolai finally stepped back, giving me room to breathe, but his eyes never left my face. "Thank you for your assistance." I nodded, too flustered to speak, and practically fled back to the elevator. My hands were still shaking when I pressed the button, and I could feel his gaze on my back the entire time, burning like a brand. The elevator doors finally opened, a different elevator, the regular one, and I stumbled inside, leaning against the wall as soon as the doors closed. My heart was racing, my palms sweaty, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something had just shifted in my carefully controlled world. I made it back to the 3rd floor and threw myself into my work, trying to forget those dark eyes and that dangerous voice. But throughout the rest of my shift, I couldn't stop thinking about him, couldn't stop feeling the ghost of his presence. At 6 a.m., my shift finally ended. I changed out of my scrubs in the staff locker room, my movements mechanical with exhaustion. My phone buzzed, a text from my sister asking if I could pick up Lily from school today. I responded with a quick yes, even though I had another shift starting at 6 p.m. I'd figure it out. I always did. I was halfway across the parking lot, fumbling for my car keys in my oversized purse, when I heard it. The screech of tires, the roar of an engine. I looked up just in time to see a black SUV careening around the corner, heading straight for the parking lot entrance at a speed that was definitely not safe for a hospital zone. I jumped back instinctively, my purse flying from my hands and spilling its contents across the asphalt. Wallet, phone, lip balm, loose change rolling everywhere. The SUV screeched to a stop about 10 feet away, and my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my ribcage. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was when I bent down to gather my scattered belongings, and saw what had fallen from an inner pocket of my purse. A small plastic bag containing about 50 white pills. Pills that definitely weren't prescribed to me. Pills that I had absolutely no explanation for being in my possession. Pills that I had never seen before in my life. My hands froze, hovering over the bag as my mind raced. This wasn't possible. I didn't use drugs. I didn't sell drugs. I was a single mother working 2 jobs to keep a roof over my daughter's head. I was... Emma Walsh? I looked up to find 2 police officers approaching, and my blood turned to ice. Behind them, getting out of the black SUV with a satisfied smirk on his face, was someone I recognized, someone I'd prayed I would never see again. Marcus Chen, my ex-boyfriend, Lily's father, the man who had disappeared 3 years ago, leaving me pregnant and alone, with nothing but debt and broken promises. And judging by the look on his face, he had just destroyed my life all over again. The handcuffs bit into my wrists as the police officer guided me into the back of the patrol car. Cold metal, unforgiving pressure. I'd never felt anything like it, never imagined I would. The world had taken on a surreal quality, like I was watching someone else's nightmare unfold from a distance. I don't understand, I kept saying, my voice breaking. Those aren't mine. I've never seen those pills before. Please, you have to believe me. The female officer, Rodriguez according to her name tag, gave me a look that was equal parts sympathy and skepticism. Ma'am, they were in your purse. That's possession. We need to take you in for processing. Through the window, I could see Marcus leaning against his SUV, talking on his phone. Even from here, I could see the satisfaction on his face, the cruel twist of his mouth. He looked different than I remembered. Harder, meaner, wearing expensive clothes that didn't match the struggling musician he'd been 3 years ago. Our eyes met across the parking lot, and he smiled. Actually smiled. That's when I knew. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a coincidence. Marcus had done this deliberately, had planted those drugs in my purse somehow, had called the police, and made sure they'd be here at exactly the right moment to catch me. But why? Why now? After 3 years of silence, the patrol car pulled away from the hospital, and I watched everything I'd worked for disappear in the rearview mirror. My job, my reputation, my daughter. Oh God, Lily. Please, I said, leaning forward as much as the seatbelt would allow. I have a daughter. She's 4 years old. I need to call my sister. You'll get your phone call at the station, Officer Rodriguez said, not unkindly. Just try to stay calm. Stay calm. How was I supposed to stay calm when my entire world was collapsing? The police station was a blur of fluorescent lights and bureaucratic efficiency. They took my fingerprints, my mugshot, my statement, which didn't matter because who would believe me? A struggling single mother found with 50 pills of what turned out to be oxycodone. It looked exactly like what they thought it was. A nurse stealing from the hospital pharmacy to sell on the street. They let me make my phone call. I called my sister, Sarah, and tried to keep my voice steady as I explained what had happened. She didn't understand. How could she? I barely understood it myself. Just get Lily from daycare, I said, fighting back tears. Don't tell her anything yet. I'll figure this out. The officer gestured that my time was up. I spent 6 hours in a holding cell, staring at gray walls and trying not to panic. They said I'd see a judge for bail hearing in the morning. They said I should call a lawyer. They said a lot of things that didn't matter because I didn't have money for a lawyer, didn't have money for bail, didn't have anything except a daughter who needed me, and a job I'd almost certainly lost. It was nearly 2 p.m. when they came to get me. Not for the bail hearing. That wouldn't be until tomorrow morning. No, they were moving me to a different cell, something about processing and paperwork, and I was too numb to care anymore. The officer led me down a different corridor, one that seemed quieter than the rest of the station. My legs felt like lead, my mind foggy with exhaustion and shock. I'd been awake for over 30 hours now, and reality had started to feel increasingly untethered. We stopped at a door marked Interview Room 3, and confusion flickered through my haze. I thought you were moving me to a different cell. The officer didn't answer, just opened the door and gestured for me to enter. The room was small, with a metal table and 4 chairs. And sitting in one of those chairs, looking completely out of place in this institutional setting, was Nikolai Volkov. He'd removed his suit jacket, and his white dress shirt was rolled up at the sleeves, revealing forearms corded with muscle. He was leaning back in his chair with the casual confidence of a man who owned everything around him, including, apparently, this police station. "Uncuff her," he said, his voice cutting through my shock. The officer hesitated. "Sir, the regulations, now." One word, spoken quietly. But the officer immediately moved to remove my handcuffs. The moment they clicked open, I felt Nikolai's eyes on my wrists, on the red marks the metal had left behind. Something dark flickered across his face, something that made my breath catch. "Leave us," he said, and the officer practically fled from the room. The door closed with a soft click that sounded unnaturally loud in the sudden silence. I stood there, frozen, unable to process what was happening. "What are you doing here?" "Sit down, Emma." It wasn't a request. My legs gave out, and I collapsed into the chair across from him more than sat. Up close, in the harsh fluorescent lighting, I could see details I'd missed in the hospital corridor, the faint scar along his jawline, the way his dark eyes seemed to see through every defense I'd ever built, the controlled power in every movement. "I don't understand," I whispered. "Why would you—" "Tell me what happened." He leaned forward, his elbows on the table, his full attention focused on me with an intensity that made me feel stripped bare, everything. So I did. Maybe it was exhaustion, or shock, or the fact that nothing made sense anymore anyway. I told him about finishing my shift, about the SUV, about my purse spilling and the drugs I'd never seen before, about Marcus appearing like a ghost from my worst nightmares, about the satisfied look on his face when the police arrested me. Nikolai listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. But I noticed his hands. They'd formed fists on the table, the knuckles white with tension. "Marcus Chen," he said when I finished. "Your ex-boyfriend? Lily's father." The words tasted bitter. "He left when I was pregnant. I haven't seen or heard from him in 3 years. I don't know why he'd do this. Why he'd—" "I do." The certainty in his voice made me look up. He was watching me with an expression that sent chills down my spine, not fear, exactly, but the recognition that I was looking at a predator who had just identified his prey. "What do you mean?" Instead of answering, he pulled out his phone and made a call. "Dimitri, I need everything on Marcus Chen, where he's been, who he's been working for, what debts he owes. I want it in 30 minutes. He paused, listening. "No, not 30 minutes. 20. He ended the call and turned his attention back to me. "Marcus Chen has been working for the Zhao family for the past 18 months. Small-time smuggling, mostly. He owes them approximately $300,000. My mind reeled. "How do you know that? Why would you know that?" A slight smile curved his lips, but there was no warmth in it. "Because the Zhao family operates in my city, Emma. And I make it my business to know everyone who does." The implications of what he was saying slowly penetrated my exhausted brain. "You're—" "Yes." He didn't elaborate, didn't need to. The single word confirmed what I'd already suspected in the hospital corridor. I should have been terrified. I should have been running for the door, screaming for help. But instead, I heard myself ask, "What does this have to do with me? Why would Marcus set me up? Insurance?" Nikolai's jaw tightened. "The Zhao family lost a shipment 2 weeks ago. $50,000 worth of pharmaceutical-grade opioids. They think Marcus stole it, and they're right. He needed a scapegoat, someone to take the fall while he disappears. Someone vulnerable, someone no one would look twice at. The room spun. He used me. He sacrificed you." The words were cold, clinical, but there was something burning beneath them, and in doing so, he made a mistake. What mistake? Nikolai stood up, buttoning his cuffs with precise movements. "He chose the wrong hospital, the man in suite 1201, the one I visited this morning. He's my uncle. My blood. And when you helped me find him, when you showed me kindness without knowing who I was," he paused, his dark eyes locking onto mine, "you became mine to protect." The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened me. Instead, it awakened something I didn't want to examine too closely. a desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't alone in this nightmare. I don't understand. Why would you help me? You don't even know me. He moved around the table with predatory grace, stopping so close I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. I know enough. I know you work 2 jobs to support your daughter. I know you've been covering shifts for other nurses who needed time off. I know you haven't taken a vacation in 2 years. I know you're exactly what you appear to be. Good, honest, innocent. How do you know all that? Because I own this city, Emma, and from the moment you looked up at me in that corridor, from the moment I saw fear and kindness warring in your eyes. He reached out, his fingers brushing the red marks on my wrist with surprising gentleness. I made you my business. His touch sent electricity through me, and I jerked back instinctively. He smiled, and this time there was something dark and satisfied in the expression. The charges will be dropped, he said, returning to his side of the table. You'll be released within the hour. Your job at the hospital will be waiting for you, along with a formal apology from the administration and the police department. How can you? Because I can. Simple. Absolute. But there are conditions. Of course there were. Nothing in life was free, especially not salvation from a man like Nikolai Volkov. What conditions? My voice came out steadier than I felt. Marcus Chen owes the Zhao family money. Money he doesn't have, because he already spent it trying to establish himself as independent. He set you up to buy himself time to run. But running won't save him, Emma. Not from them, and certainly not from me. I don't want revenge. I just want my life back. Too late for that. He leaned forward, his eyes boring into mine. Marcus knows you saw him. He knows you can identify him. And when the Zhao family realizes the police arrested the wrong person, they'll come looking for answers. They'll come looking for you and your daughter. Terror flooded through me, cold and paralyzing. Lily. Oh God, Lily. I have men watching your sister's house right now. Your daughter is safe, but she'll only stay safe if you agree to my terms. I wanted to argue, to fight, to maintain some semblance of independence, but I was a mother first, and Lily's safety trumped everything else. What do you want? You and your daughter move into my estate, under my protection, under my name. You work at the private medical facility I own instead of the public hospital. Better pay, better hours, and most importantly, controlled access. No one gets to you without going through me first. It sounded like a cage wrapped in silk. For how long? Until I've dealt with Marcus and neutralized the threat from the Zhao family, he paused. Or until you choose to leave. That last part surprised me. I can leave? You're not a prisoner, Emma. You're under my protection. There's a difference. His eyes darkened. Though I should warn you, I'm not good at letting go of things I consider mine. There it was again. That possessive edge that should have terrified me, but instead made something flutter low in my stomach. And if I say no, then I walk out of this room, and you take your chances with the legal system, with Marcus, with the Zhao family. You gamble with your life and your daughter's future. He stood up, preparing to leave. Choose quickly, Emma. My patience has limits. I thought of Lily, of her bright smile and infectious laugh, of the way she called me Mama and trusted me to keep her safe. I thought of Marcus's satisfied smirk, of the drugs planted in my purse, of how easily my life had been destroyed in a single moment. I thought of having nowhere else to turn. Okay, I whispered. We'll come. Nikolai's smile was triumphant and terrifying in equal measure. Smart girl. He moved to the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. One more thing, Emma. From this moment forward, you don't speak to anyone about our arrangement without my permission. You don't go anywhere without security. And most importantly, he turned back, his expression deadly serious. You trust no one but me. Understood? I nodded, my throat too tight for words. Good. He opened the door and I heard voices in the corridor, authoritative, deferential. Someone will take you to collect your daughter. Pack what you need for both of you. My men will handle the rest. Then he was gone, leaving me alone in the interview room with the scent of his cologne and the terrifying realization that I'd just traded one kind of danger for another. But at least this danger had promised to keep Lily safe, and for that, I would have made a deal with the devil himself. The estate was nothing like I'd imagined, though I'm not sure what I'd expected from a man like Nikolai Volkov. Maybe something dark and fortress-like, all concrete walls and armed guards. Instead, the car, a sleek black Mercedes with bulletproof windows and a driver who looked like he could bench press a tank, pulled through ornate iron gates into what could only be described as a private paradise. Lily pressed her face against the window, her eyes wide with wonder. "Mama, is this a castle?" "Something like that, baby." My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. The main house rose 3 stories from manicured grounds, all cream-colored stone and tall windows that glinted in the late afternoon sun. Gardens sprawled in every direction. Roses, fountains, marble statues that probably cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime. It was beautiful. It was opulent. It was a cage wrapped in beauty, just as I'd suspected. Sarah had handed Lily over with questions I couldn't answer and concern written all over her face. "Emma, what's going on? Who are these men? Why do you have bodyguards?" "It's complicated," I'd said, hugging Lily tight and breathing in her familiar scent of strawberry shampoo and childhood innocence. "I'll explain everything soon, I promise." But how could I explain what I didn't fully understand myself? The car stopped at the front entrance, and the driver, a man named Victor, who'd spoken maybe 5 words during the entire drive, opened the door. Lily scrambled out first, immediately entranced by a nearby fountain featuring bronze dolphins. "Stay close to Mama," I said automatically, grabbing her hand. "Mrs. Walsh, if you'll follow me." A woman appeared at the top of the steps, elegant and professional in a gray dress that screamed expensive simplicity. "I'm Mrs. Chen, the estate manager. Mr. Volkov asked me to show you to your quarters." Mrs. Chen. The same last name as Marcus. I wondered if Nikolai had done that deliberately, a reminder of why I was here. Inside was even more breathtaking. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork that belonged in museums. Lily's hand tightened in mine, and I realized she was feeling as overwhelmed as I was. This wasn't our world. We didn't belong in places like this. "Your suite is on the 2nd floor, east wing," Mrs. Chen said as we climbed a sweeping staircase. "Mr. Volkov wanted you to have privacy and access to the gardens. He thought your daughter might enjoy the play area we maintain for visiting family, as if we were guests rather than..." What? Refugees? Prisoners? Protected assets? She opened double doors into a space larger than my entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the gardens, letting in golden afternoon light. The living area featured cream-colored furniture that looked like no one had ever sat on it, while an open door revealed a bedroom beyond with a bed so large it could sleep 4 people comfortably. "The child's room is through here, Mrs. Chen continued, leading us to an adjoining space that made Lily gasp with delight. It was a little girl's dream, painted in soft lavender with white furniture. A canopy bed draped in gauze, shelves lined with toys and books that still had price tags. Someone had thought of everything, down to the stuffed animals arranged on the bed and the child-sized table set up for tea parties. "Mama, look!" Lily ran to examine a dollhouse that was an exact replica of this very estate. "It's so pretty, Mr. Volkov had this prepared this afternoon," Mrs. Chen said quietly. "He wanted your daughter to feel at home." The thoughtfulness was unexpected, unsettling. It spoke of resources and power I couldn't comprehend. The ability to transform a room in hours, to anticipate needs I hadn't even voiced, to create comfort in the middle of chaos. "When will I see him?" I asked. "Mr. Volkov? He'll join you for dinner at 7. Until then, please make yourselves comfortable. If you need anything, just press the button by the door. Someone will assist you immediately." Mrs. Chen moved toward the exit, then paused. "Mrs. Walsh, Mr. Volkov wanted me to tell you that you're safe here, truly safe. He takes the protection of his household very seriously." After she left, I sank onto the couch and watched Lily explore her new room through the open doorway. She was chattering to herself, already adapting the way children do, already accepting this strange new reality with the resilience I wished I possessed. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah demanding answers. I stared at it, Nikolai's warning echoing in my mind. "You don't speak to anyone about our arrangement without my permission." I typed out a careful response. "Everything's fine. New security job came up with housing included. We'll explain more soon. Love you." It wasn't entirely a lie, but it felt like one. The hours until dinner passed in a strange suspension of time. I unpacked our meager belongings, clothes that looked shabby in this palatial closet. Lily's favorite stuffed rabbit, a photo of my parents who died when I was 20. Everything I owned fit into 2 suitcases, a stark reminder of how little I had, how easily my entire life could be uprooted. At 6:30, there was a soft knock. A young woman entered carrying garment bags. "Mr. Volkov thought you might want something for dinner," she said shyly, laying them across the bed. "He asked that I help with your hair and makeup, if you'd like." Inside the bags were dresses, elegant, expensive, in styles that would actually flatter my figure. Size 6, exactly right. Of course Nikolai would know my size. He seemed to know everything else. I chose a simple navy dress, declining the makeup help, but accepting assistance with my hair. The woman, her name was Irina, styled it into a loose updo that made me look sophisticated, almost beautiful. Almost like I belonged here. Lily wore a pink dress that had been included in the haul, and she twirled in front of the mirror, delighted. "I look like a princess." "You are a princess," I said, kissing the top of her head and trying not to think about the cost of everything we were wearing. Mrs. Chen returned at 7 precisely to escort us to dinner. We walked through corridors lined with art I didn't recognize but suspected was priceless, past rooms whose purposes I could only guess at. The house seemed to go on forever, a labyrinth of luxury. The dining room was more intimate than I'd expected. A round table set for 3, candles flickering in crystal holders, windows overlooking gardens now lit by strategically placed lights that turned the landscaping into something magical. And there, standing by the window with a glass of what looked like whiskey, was Nikolai. He'd changed into dark slacks and a black dress shirt, the sleeves rolled up the way they'd been in the police station. He looked relaxed, dangerous, completely at ease in this world of wealth and power. When he turned and saw us, something flickered across his face. Satisfaction, possession, and something else I couldn't name. Emma. My name on his lips sounded different than when other people said it, weighted with meaning I didn't understand. "I'm glad you're here." His eyes traveled over me, taking in the dress, the hair, every detail. And I felt suddenly exposed despite being fully clothed. Then his gaze shifted to Lily, and his expression softened in a way I hadn't thought possible. "And you must be Lily." He crouched down to her level, making himself less intimidating. "I'm Nikolai. Welcome to my home." Lily, who was usually shy with strangers, studied him with the intense scrutiny only a 4-year-old could manage. "You have a big house." "I do. Do you like it?" "Uh-huh, especially the dollhouse, and the dolphins." She tilted her head. "Are you Mama's friend?" "Yes," he said without hesitation, his eyes flicking to mine. "I'm your Mama's very good friend." The lie, if it was a lie, came so smoothly. But Lily accepted it with a nod, and Nikolai straightened, gesturing to the table. "Shall we eat? I hope you're both hungry." Dinner was surreal. Courses appeared as if by magic. Soup, salad, perfectly cooked salmon with vegetables Lily actually ate without complaining. Nikolai kept the conversation light, asking Lily about her favorite toys, her daycare, what she wanted to be when she grew up. He was charming, attentive, and if I hadn't known who and what he was, I might have believed he was exactly what he appeared to be, a wealthy man being kind to a woman and child who needed help. But I did know, and I couldn't forget the controlled violence in his security detail, the way people obeyed him without question, the darkness that lurked behind those watchful eyes. After Lily started yawning into her dessert, Mrs. Chen appeared to take her up to bed. "I'll read her a story and stay until she falls asleep," she assured me when I started to protest. "It's all right," Nikolai said quietly. "Let Mrs. Chen handle it. You and I need to talk." Once Lily was gone, the air in the room seemed to thicken. Nikolai refilled his whiskey and poured me a glass of white wine without asking if I wanted it. I took it anyway, needing something to do with my hands. "She's lovely," he said, returning to his seat. "She has your eyes, and her father's smile." The words came out more bitter than I intended. Not that he ever stuck around to see it. Marcus Chen made many mistakes in his life. Leaving you was the first, crossing me was the last. The casual certainty in his voice sent chills down my spine. What are you going to do to him? What do you want me to do to him? He leaned back, watching me over the rim of his glass. He tried to destroy your life, Emma. He used you as a disposable pawn. He put your daughter at risk. What do you think he deserves? I wanted to say mercy. I wanted to be the bigger person, to prove I wasn't capable of the darkness I saw in Nikolai's eyes. But when I thought of Lily, of how close I'd come to losing her, of the fear and helplessness I'd felt in that holding cell, I want him to pay, I whispered. I want him to understand what he did to us. Good. Nikolai's smile was predatory. Because he will. But first, I need information from you. Everything you remember about Marcus. His friends, his habits, places he liked to go, anything that might help me find him before the Zhao family does, so I told him. It felt like excavating a grave, pulling up memories I'd buried deep, the apartment we'd shared, the clubs where Marcus played his music, the friends who'd enabled his worst impulses. It wasn't much, and most of it was 3 years old, but Nikolai listened intently, occasionally asking questions that revealed just how thoroughly he understood the city's criminal underbelly. He'll run to his cousin in Brooklyn, Nikolai said when I finished. David Chen. Small-time fence thinks he's smarter than he is. I'll have men there by morning, and then what? Then I'll have a conversation with Marcus about the consequences of his choices. He stood up, moving to the window. But that's not your concern, Emma. Your concern is adjusting to life here, keeping Lily happy and safe, and starting your new position at my medical facility next week. Just like that, I'm supposed to pretend everything's normal. Normal is relative. He turned back to face me, and in the candlelight, his features took on a harder edge. You're under my protection now. That means you follow my rules, accept my decisions, and trust that I know what's best for your safety. The arrogance should have infuriated me. Instead, it awoke something I didn't want to acknowledge. A treacherous relief at having someone else make the decisions, carry the weight, ensure Lily's safety. I'd been alone for so long, fighting so hard, and the temptation to surrender that burden was overwhelming and dangerous. I'm not good at following rules, I said, meeting his gaze, or accepting other people's decisions. No? He crossed the space between us with predatory grace, stopping close enough that I could smell his cologne, feel the heat of his body. Then let me make something very clear, Emma. I don't care what you're good at. I care about keeping you alive. And if that means you have to sacrifice some of your independence, some of your pride, then that's a price you'll pay. Because the alternative, the Zhao family finding you, Marcus using Lily as leverage, you ending up in a ditch somewhere, is unacceptable to me. Why? The question burst out before I could stop it. Why do you care? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. So why go to all this trouble? He reached out, his fingers tracing the curve of my jaw with a gentleness that contradicted everything else about him. Because from the moment I saw you in that hospital corridor, exhausted and kind and so goddamn beautiful it hurt to look at you, I knew you were mine to protect, mine to keep, mine. The possessiveness in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, it ignited something low in my belly, a heat that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the dangerous attraction I'd been trying to deny since I first met his eyes. That's insane, I whispered. Yes. His thumb brushed across my lower lip, and my breath caught. But I've never claimed to be sane, Emma. I'm a violent man who's done terrible things. I've killed, stolen, destroyed lives without remorse. But you, his eyes burned into mine. You're different. You're good. And I'm going to keep you that way, even if it means keeping you locked in a cage made of silk and gold. He stepped back abruptly, as if touching me had burned him. Go to bed, Emma. Tomorrow, we'll discuss your new work schedule and security protocols. For tonight, just rest. You're safe here. I wanted to argue, to demand more answers, to understand what I'd gotten myself into. But exhaustion was pulling at me like an undertow. and Lily was upstairs waiting, and maybe, just maybe, I needed to accept that some questions didn't have comfortable answers. "Good night, Nikolai," I said quietly. "Good night, Emma." He turned back to the window, dismissing me. "Sleep well. Tomorrow, everything changes." I walked back through the labyrinth of corridors, finding my way by instinct and the discreet guidance of a guard stationed at every turn. When I finally reached our suite, I found Lily fast asleep in her canopy bed, Mrs. Chen sitting in a chair nearby with a book. "She went down easy," the older woman said softly. "Tired from all the excitement. I'll leave you now. But if you need anything during the night, just press the call button." Alone in my own oversized bed, staring at the ceiling through gauze curtains that filtered moonlight into something dreamlike, I finally let myself process everything that had happened. 24 hours ago, I'd been a single mother working double shifts and barely scraping by. Now I was living in a mansion under the protection of a man who spoke of ownership like it was romance, who promised violence as if it were devotion. I should have been planning my escape. Instead, I was thinking about the way his thumb had felt against my lip, the promise in his dark eyes, the terrifying security of being claimed by someone powerful enough to destroy anyone who threatened me. My phone buzzed one last time before I silenced it, a text from an unknown number. "Sleep well, Emma. My men are watching. You're safe." I shouldn't have found comfort in that message. But as I drifted off to sleep, surrounded by luxury I hadn't earned and protection I'd never asked for, I realized that safety had become more precious than freedom, and that realization scared me more than anything else. 3 days passed in a blur of routine that felt anything but normal. Each morning, I woke to find breakfast already prepared in the suite's kitchenette, fresh fruit, pastries, coffee that tasted like liquid gold. Lily adapted with the ease of childhood, already befriending the gardener's daughter and spending hours in the play area that had indeed been designed for visiting family members I'd never met. I should have felt like a guest. Instead, I felt like a bird in a gilded cage, beautiful and trapped in equal measure. Nikolai was everywhere and nowhere. I'd catch glimpses of him through windows, crossing the courtyard with men in dark suits, taking phone calls in what I'd learned was his study, disappearing into black cars that returned hours later. But he never approached, never sought me out, maintaining a distance that felt deliberate and confusing. On the 4th morning, Mrs. Chen informed me that I'd be starting at the medical facility that afternoon. "Mr. Volkov wants you to meet the staff and familiarize yourself with the space," she said, handing me a tablet with facility information. "Victor will drive you at noon." The Volkov Medical Center was nothing like the overcrowded public hospital I'd left behind. Located in a converted brownstone in one of the city's most exclusive neighborhoods, it catered to clients who valued discretion as much as quality care. The lobby looked more like a luxury hotel than a medical facility. All marble and soft lighting and artwork that probably cost more than most people's homes. Dr. Sarah Kim, the facility director, gave me a tour that left my head spinning. Private recovery suites with hotel-quality amenities, state-of-the-art equipment I'd only read about in medical journals, a staff-to-patient ratio that actually allowed for quality care instead of the assembly line medicine I was used to. "We primarily handle elective procedures, rehabilitation, and what I like to call discrete medical needs," Dr. Kim explained as we walked through the pristine halls. "Our clients value privacy above all else. Many are public figures who can't risk their medical information becoming news, and some are criminals who can't risk going to a regular hospital," I said quietly. Dr. Kim didn't flinch. "We don't judge our patients, Emma. We treat them. That's all that matters here." She paused outside a door marked Private Office, E. Walsh. "This is yours. Mr. Volkov was very specific about wanting you to have your own space." The office was small but beautifully appointed. A desk, comfortable chairs, a window overlooking a private garden. On the desk sat a framed photo I recognized immediately. Me and Lily at the park last summer, both of us laughing at something I couldn't remember. I'd kept that photo on my bedside table in our old apartment. Someone had gone through my things. Someone had chosen this specific photo and framed it and placed it here. The invasion of privacy should have angered me. Instead, I felt something more complicated, a mixture of violation and tenderness that I didn't want to examine too closely. Your schedule is flexible, Dr. Kim continued. Mr. Volkov insisted that you be able to pick up Lily from daycare yourself. We've arranged for a driver to take you when needed, and if there are emergencies, we have on-call staff to cover. This is too much, I said, overwhelmed. The office, the flexibility, Mr. Volkov takes care of his people. Dr. Kim's expression was kind, but firm. Let him. Trust me, it's easier that way. I spent the afternoon reviewing patient files and meeting staff, all of whom treated me with a deference I hadn't earned. They knew. Everyone knew that I was under Nikolai Volkov's protection, and that made me untouchable, valuable, dangerous to cross. It was nearly 6 when Victor drove me back to the estate. Lily was in the gardens with Mrs. Chen, feeding the koi in the ornamental pond, her laughter carrying across the manicured lawns. The sight made my chest ache with a happiness I didn't trust. This wasn't real. This couldn't last. But God, watching my daughter thrive in a way she never had before, was intoxicating. Emma. I turned to find Nikolai standing on the terrace, and my heart did something complicated in my chest. He'd removed his suit jacket, his shirt sleeves rolled up, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him. But there was something in his expression, tension, maybe, or anticipation, that set my nerves on edge. "How was your first day?" he asked as I climbed the terrace steps. Overwhelming, beautiful, confusing. I stopped a few feet away, maintaining distance I wasn't sure either of us wanted. "You went through my things, the photo in my office. I wanted you to have something familiar." No apology, just statement of fact. "Did it upset you?" "I don't know what I am anymore," I admitted. Grateful, angry, confused, scared, all of it at once. He moved closer, and I held my ground, even though every instinct screamed at me to step back. "You're allowed to feel all those things, Emma. This situation is far from normal. Have you found him?" The question I'd been afraid to ask. "Marcus?" Something dark crossed Nikolai's face. "We're close. He's been moving around, trying to stay ahead of both me and the Zhao family. But he'll make a mistake. They always do. And when you find him, that depends." He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear with a gentleness that seemed at odds with the violence I knew he was capable of. "On what you want me to do." Before I could answer, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his entire demeanor changed, the relaxation vanishing, replaced by cold, lethal focus. "I need to take this. Go inside, Emma. Now." The urgency in his voice triggered every alarm bell I had. "What's wrong?" "Inside. Now." He was already moving toward the house, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Russian to whoever was on the other end. I hurried after him, fear crawling up my spine. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. Inside, the house had transformed into controlled chaos. Men in dark suits moved through corridors with purpose, weapons I tried not to look at too closely visible beneath their jackets. Mrs. Chen appeared, her usual calm cracked at the edges. "Take Lily to the panic room," Nikolai ordered, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Emma goes with her. No one else." "What's happening?" I demanded, grabbing his arm. "Tell me what's going on." He looked down at where I touched him, then back to my face, and what I saw there made my blood run cold. "The Zhao family found out about you. They're on their way here. Now." The world tilted. How? How could they? "Marcus." The name came out like a curse. "He gave them your location to buy himself more time. They're 15 minutes out, maybe less." He gripped my shoulders, forcing me to focus on him. "Listen to me very carefully, Emma. You and Lily are going into the safe room beneath the house. You'll be protected there. My men will handle this. Your men. There's how many of them? How many are coming? Does it matter?" His eyes burned into mine. "I would call 1,000 men to protect you. I would burn this entire city down before I let them touch you or your daughter. Do you understand me?" The ferociousness in his voice, the absolute certainty, should have terrified me. Instead, it ignited something fierce and primal in my chest, a recognition that this man, this dangerous, violent man, had claimed me as his to protect, and he would keep that promise no matter the cost. "Nikolai, Go, now." He kissed my forehead, quick and hard, then pushed me toward Mrs. Chen. "Keep them safe." The panic room was accessed through a hidden door in the library, revealed when Mrs. Chen pressed a specific book spine. Stone steps descended into what looked like a bunker. Reinforced walls, security monitors, supplies for an extended stay. Lily, who Mrs. Chen had collected from the garden, looked scared for the first time since we'd arrived. "Mama, what's happening?" "Just a precaution, baby." I pulled her close, trying to keep my voice steady. "We're going to wait here for a little while, okay? It's like a game." "I don't like this game," she whispered against my chest. "I know, sweetheart. I know." Mrs. Chen sealed the door behind us, and the locks engaged with a series of mechanical clicks that sounded like a tomb closing. The security monitors showed multiple angles of the estate: the gates, the driveway, the house exterior. On one screen, I could see Nikolai standing in the courtyard, surrounded by what looked like at least 40 men in tactical gear. 40 men. To protect me. The absurdity and gravity of it hit me simultaneously. "Mrs. Walsh," Mrs. Chen said softly, "you should see this." She pointed to another monitor, this one showing the road leading to the estate. My breath caught. Cars. So many cars. Black SUVs moving in formation. At least 20 of them. Maybe more. "That's the Zhao family?" I whispered. "And their associates." Mrs. Chen's face was grim. "They brought an army." On the main monitor, I watched Nikolai give orders, his men spreading out in defensive positions. He looked calm, almost relaxed, as if he faced small armies every day. Maybe he did. What did I really know about his life? About the violence he'd casually mentioned committing? The cars reached the gate, stopped. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the shooting started. Even through the reinforced walls, I could hear it. The rapid crack of gunfire, the shouts, the chaos. Lily clamped her hands over her ears, and I pulled her into my lap, covering her body with mine, useless protection against what was happening above us. The monitors showed hell. Muzzle flashes in the growing darkness. Men taking cover behind vehicles, walls, statues. The beautiful gardens being torn apart by bullets. And in the center of it all, Nikolai, moving with lethal precision, returning fire with a calm that spoke of extensive experience. "How long will this last?" I asked Mrs. Chen, my voice shaking. "Until one side wins or retreats." She was watching the monitors with the detachment of someone who'd seen this before. "The Zhao family is trying to send a message. Mr. Volkov is sending one back." Minutes crawled by like hours. On screen, I watched bodies fall. Some of Nikolai's men, more of the attackers. The violence was surreal, like watching an action movie, except this was real. These were real bullets, real blood, real death, happening because of me. Then on one monitor, I saw something that made my heart stop. More cars, dozens of them. Coming from every direction, surrounding the Zhao family's forces like a closing fist. "What?" I started. "Reinforcements." Mrs. Chen's lips curved into a small smile. Mr. Volkov called in the families allied to him. The Sokolovs, the Petrovs, the Ivanovs. Every Russian organization in the city just showed up to defend his territory. I watched in awe as what had to be hundreds of men emerged from the newly arrived vehicles. The Zhao family, realizing they were suddenly outnumbered at least 3-1, began retreating. The shooting intensified briefly, then started to fade as the attackers fled. It was over in less than 30 minutes. 30 minutes that felt like a lifetime. The all-clear signal came through. 3 long tones on the intercom system. Mrs. Chen unlocked the door, and we emerged into a house that looked untouched, as if the battle outside had never happened. But when I stepped onto the terrace, I could see the damage, bullet holes in the stone walls, shattered windows, flowers destroyed, fountains cracked, and bodies. Oh God. The bodies being loaded into vehicles, covered with tarps, disappeared with the efficiency of people who'd done this many times before. Nikolai stood in the courtyard, covered in what looked like someone else's blood, talking to men I didn't recognize. His suit was ruined, his face grim, but he was alive. He was alive. The relief that flooded through me was overwhelming, confusing, terrifying in its intensity. He saw me on the terrace and said something to the men around him before striding toward the house. His men parted before him like water, and I saw the respect. No, the worship in their eyes as he passed. This was who he really was, not the charming man who'd been kind to Lily at dinner, not the protective figure who'd promised to keep me safe. This was Nikolai Volkov, the ruthless head of the Russian Bratva, who commanded armies and waged wars and left bodies in his wake. He took the terrace steps 2 at a time, stopping directly in front of me. Up close, I could see the blood splattered across his shirt, the cut above his left eyebrow, the fury still burning in his dark eyes. "Are you hurt?" His hands were on my face, tilting it toward the light, checking for injuries that didn't exist. "I'm fine. We're fine." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "You're bleeding." "It's nothing." He dismissed the cut with a wave. "Emma, I need you to understand something. What you just witnessed. That's the world I live in. That's who I am. Violence, death, war. It's my reality. And now it's yours too, because of me." "Because of Marcus," I corrected. "He's the one who—" "No." His grip tightened on my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. "This is on me. I claimed you, made you mine, and that put a target on your back. The Zhao family came here to send me a message. That they can reach my people, hurt what I protect. They failed today, but they'll try again. Everyone will. Now that they know you matter to me." The revelation hung between us, heavy and significant. "I matter to you. Yes." No hesitation, no softening of the admission. "You matter. More than you should. More than is wise. More than I can afford. But I can't seem to make myself care about the consequences." On the monitor, I could still see through the terrace doors. Bodies were being cleared, damage assessed. The world Nikolai had just described made visceral and real. I should have been repulsed. I should have been planning to run the moment I had the chance. Instead, I found myself saying, "What happens now?" "Now?" A dark smile curved his lips. "Now I make it very clear that touching you means death. I'm going to find Marcus, and I'm going to make an example of him that will echo through every criminal organization in this city. I'm going to show the Zhao family what it costs to come after what's mine. And then—" He leaned closer, his breath warm against my ear. "Then I'm going to make sure you never leave me, Emma, because I've tasted what it's like to protect you, to keep you safe, to know you're under my roof, and I'm not strong enough to give that up." His words should have sounded like a threat. Instead, they sounded like a promise, dark and seductive and absolute. "You're insane," I whispered. "I warned you I was." He pulled back, his eyes searching mine. "Tell me to stop, Emma. Tell me you want to leave, and I'll arrange safe passage for you and Lily somewhere far from here. New identities, new lives, protection from a distance. Just say the word." It was a test, maybe, or an out. A chance to escape before I fell any deeper into this dangerous, seductive world. I thought of Lily upstairs, traumatized by what she'd heard. I thought of the bodies being cleared from the gardens. I thought of the violence that would always be part of Nikolai's life, the danger that came with being his. And then, I thought of his hands on my face, checking for injuries, the way he'd called in an army to protect me. The absolute certainty in his voice when he said I mattered. "I'm not leaving," I said, and watched something fierce and triumphant flare in his eyes. "Good." He kissed me then, hard and possessive and tasting of violence and promise, because I wasn't going to let you go anyway. 2 weeks passed before Nikolai found Marcus. 2 weeks of settling into a routine that felt increasingly less like captivity and more like something else. Something dangerous and addictive that I was afraid to name. I worked at the medical facility, picked up Lily from the private school Nikolai had enrolled her in, returned each evening to the estate that had started to feel disturbingly like home. The attack had left visible scars, repaired windows, new stonework, gardens still recovering from the violence, but it had also left invisible ones. Lily had nightmares the first few nights, waking up crying about loud noises and bad men. I'd hold her until she fell back asleep, then lie awake wondering what kind of mother allowed her daughter to live in a world where gunfights were a reality. But then morning would come, and Lily would laugh at breakfast with Mrs. Chen, play in gardens patrolled by armed guards she'd learned to see as friendly protectors, ask when Mr. Nikolai would be home for dinner. She was adapting, thriving even, in ways that made my guilt and gratitude war inside my chest. Nikolai himself had been different since the attack. More present, more openly possessive. He'd taken to having dinner with us most nights, listening to Lily chatter about her day with a patience I wouldn't have thought him capable of. And after she went to bed, he'd pour us wine and we'd talk about everything and nothing, carefully avoiding the most dangerous topics while circling ever closer to truths neither of us was ready to voice. The tension between us had become almost unbearable. Every accidental touch felt electric. Every shared glance carried weight. We hadn't kissed again since that night on the terrace, but the memory of it hung between us like a promise waiting to be fulfilled. On the 14th night, I was reading in the suite sitting room when Nikolai appeared in the doorway. One look at his face told me everything had changed. "We found him," he said without preamble. "Marcus. He was hiding in a warehouse in Red Hook." My book fell from nerveless fingers. "Is he alive? For now." He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him with a soft click that sounded unnaturally loud. "I wanted to give you a choice, Emma. I can handle this myself, make him disappear, and you never have to think about him again. Or you can come with me, see him. Say whatever you need to say before I finish this." His eyes were dark, unreadable. "There's no right answer. Whatever you choose, I'll understand." I should have said no, should have let Nikolai handle it, while I stayed safely removed from the violence I knew was coming. But Marcus had destroyed my life, planted drugs to send me to prison, used our daughter as a bargaining chip to save his own skin. And some primal part of me needed him to see that he'd failed, that I'd survived, that I was stronger than he'd ever given me credit for. "I want to see him," I said quietly. Nikolai's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Approval, maybe, or satisfaction. "Get your coat. We leave in 5 minutes." The warehouse was exactly what I'd expected. Decrepit, isolated, the kind of place where screams would go unheard. Victor drove us there in silence, and when we arrived, I saw at least 20 of Nikolai's men stationed around the perimeter. Whatever was about to happen, there would be no interruptions, no rescue. Inside, the space had been cleared except for a single chair in the center, illuminated by harsh fluorescent work lights. And tied to that chair, bleeding from a split lip and what looked like a broken nose, was Marcus Chen. He looked up when we entered, and the fear in his eyes transformed to shock when he saw me. "Emma? What the fuck?" "Careful." Nikolai's voice cut through the warehouse like a blade. "That's the last time you speak to her without permission." Marcus's gaze darted between us, understanding dawning. "Oh God. You're with him? You're with Volkov?" "She's under my protection," Nikolai corrected, his hand settling possessively on the small of my back. "Because of what you did. Because you tried to destroy her life to save your worthless skin." "I didn't have a choice. The Zhao family would have killed me. They wanted their money and I didn't have it, so I—" Marcus cut himself off, realizing his defense only made things worse. "So you sacrificed the mother of your child." Nikolai circled the chair slowly, a predator evaluating prey. "You planted drugs in her purse, called the police, arranged for her arrest, all while knowing she was innocent, knowing she had Lily to care for, knowing exactly what prison would do to her life." "I was desperate." Marcus's voice rose, panicked. "You don't understand what it's like owing the Zhao family. They were going to— I don't care what they were going to do." The temperature in the room seemed to drop with Nikolai's words. "I care that you made Emma a target, that you endangered a child, that you thought you could use my city as your personal playground without consequences." He nodded to one of his men, who stepped forward with a metal case. When it opened, I saw things I didn't want to identify. Tools designed to cause pain, to extract information, to inflict suffering. I should have looked away, should have left the warehouse, waited in the car, preserved some innocence, but I couldn't move. Couldn't stop watching as Marcus's face went white with terror. "Please," Marcus whispered. "Please. I'll do anything. I'll disappear. You'll never see me again, I swear." "You're right about one thing." Nikolai selected something from the case. "Pliers," I realized with sick fascination. "I'll never see you again. But first, Emma has something to say to you." All eyes turned to me. Marcus is desperate and pleading. Nikolai's dark and expectant. The guards carefully neutral. And I realized this was my moment. My chance to confront the man who'd abandoned me, betrayed me, nearly destroyed everything I'd built. I stepped closer to Marcus's chair, close enough to see the fear sweat on his face, smell the desperation rolling off him in waves. Up close, he looked smaller than I remembered, weaker, pathetic in a way that made my years of anger seem almost wasted. "You left me pregnant and alone," I said, my voice steady despite the emotions churning inside. "I worked 2 jobs to support our daughter. I went without sleep, without food, without anything that wasn't absolutely necessary, just to give her a decent life. And she's amazing, Marcus. She's smart and kind and beautiful, and you'll never know her. You'll never get to see the person she becomes." "Emma, please. I'm not finished." The steel in my voice surprised even me. "You could have just disappeared. You could have stayed gone, and I would have been fine with that. But you couldn't even give me that dignity. You had to actively try to destroy me, to take away the life I'd built without you. And for what? A few extra weeks of running from people you owed money." Marcus was crying now, tears mixing with the blood on his face. "I'm sorry. God, Emma, I'm so sorry. I never meant for—" "You're not sorry," I interrupted. "You're scared. There's a difference." I stepped back, suddenly exhausted by the confrontation I'd thought I needed. "I came here thinking I wanted revenge, that I needed to see you suffer for what you did. But looking at you now, I realize you're already suffering. You're going to die tonight because you made stupid choices and burned every bridge you ever had. And I don't need to watch that. I don't need to carry that with me." I turned to Nikolai. "I'm ready to leave." Something like respect flickered across his face. He nodded to Victor, who moved to escort me out, but I paused at the warehouse door, looking back one last time. "She asks about you sometimes," I said to Marcus. "Lily. She asks why she doesn't have a daddy like other kids. I tell her that her daddy loved her but couldn't stay. I made you into something noble in her mind. Something tragic. You should know that she'll grow up thinking well of you, even though you don't deserve it. That's my gift to her, not to you. The gift of not knowing what her father really was." Then I walked out into the night air, leaving Marcus to face the consequences of his choices. In the car, Victor drove in silence while I stared out the window at the city lights blurring past. Behind us, in that warehouse, Nikolai was doing things I didn't want to imagine. Terrible things. Necessary things, maybe, in the world he inhabited. I should have felt guilty, should have felt complicit, should have felt something other than the numb exhaustion that had settled over me like a blanket. By the time we reached the estate, it was after midnight. Mrs. Chen assured me Lily had gone to bed without incident, and I checked on her anyway, needing to see her peaceful face. Remind myself why any of this mattered. I was in my own room, changed into pajamas and trying to pretend I might actually sleep, when I heard the suite door open. Heavy footsteps crossed the sitting room, then my bedroom door swung open to reveal Nikolai. He'd cleaned up, changed clothes, but there was something raw in his expression that hadn't been there before. He looked at me like a drowning man looks at shore, desperate, determined, barely holding himself together. "Is he dead?" I asked, even though I knew the answer. "Yes." No elaboration, no justification, just simple truth. "Good." The word surprised us both, but I meant it. Marcus had made his choices, and those choices had consequences. In Nikolai's world, those consequences were terminal. "Are you afraid of me now?" Nikolai asked, still standing in the doorway. "Now that you've seen what I'm capable of?" I should have said yes, should have recoiled from the violence, maintained some moral high ground. But I was tired of pretending, tired of fighting the truth I'd been dancing around for weeks. "No," I said. "I'm afraid of how much I don't care. I'm afraid that watching you kill a man should bother me more than it does." I'm afraid that being here with you, living under your protection, accepting your gifts and your violence, I'm afraid of how right it all feels. He crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling me up from the bed and into his arms with a desperation that stole my breath. Then stop fighting it, he growled against my hair. Stop pretending you don't feel this. Stop acting like you want to leave when we both know you'd tear yourself apart trying. This is insane, I whispered, even as my hands clutched his shirt, holding him closer. You're a criminal. A killer. Everything about this is wrong. Yes. His lips found my temple, my cheek, the corner of my mouth. And you're still here, still mine, still choosing this even when I've given you every reason to run. He was right. God help me, he was right. I'd had chances to leave, opportunities to escape with Lily to somewhere safe, but I hadn't taken them, because somewhere between the police station and tonight, between fear and protection, between danger and desire, I'd stopped seeing Nikolai as my captor and started seeing him as something more complicated. I can't promise you safety, he said, pulling back to look at me with eyes that burned with intensity. My life is violence and danger and things you shouldn't have to witness. But I can promise you this. I will protect you and Lily with everything I have. I will destroy anyone who threatens you. I will give you anything you want, anything you need, anything that makes you happy, and I will never, ever let you go. That's not a promise, I said softly. That's a threat. It's both. His thumb traced my lower lip, the gesture achingly familiar from that night in the police station. Tell me you don't want this. Tell me you don't feel it too, and I'll walk out of this room right now. I'll keep you safe. Keep my distance. Let you live here as nothing more than someone under my protection. Just say the words. I should have said them. Should have maintained boundaries, protected myself, thought about Lily and what kind of example I was setting. Should have been the responsible single mother I'd always tried to be. Instead, I kissed him. It was different from the brief, possessive kiss on the terrace. This was desperate and hungry and filled with weeks of tension finally breaking free, his hands tangled in my hair, tilting my head to deepen the kiss. And I melted into him with a surrender that should have terrified me, but instead felt like coming home. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. Say it, he demanded. Say you're mine. I'm yours. The words came easily, naturally, like they'd been waiting weeks to be spoken. God help me, I'm yours. The smile that crossed his face was pure triumph, mixed with something softer, relief, maybe, or joy, or the same desperate happiness I felt blooming in my chest, despite every logical reason not to. And Lily? I had to ask, had to know. What does this mean for her? It means she gains a father who will actually protect her. His voice was fierce. I'll adopt her legally, give her my name, make sure she never wants for anything. She'll grow up safe, educated, prepared for whatever life she chooses. And anyone who tries to hurt her will face the same fate as Marcus Chen. Violence and devotion, inextricably linked. That was who Nikolai Volkov was, and I was choosing him anyway. This is crazy, I said again. But there was no conviction in it anymore. Yes, he agreed, pulling me back into his arms. But you've always known that. 6 months later, I stood in the estate gardens watching Lily chase butterflies with the unself-conscious joy of a 5-year-old who'd never known real fear. She called Nikolai Papa now, had done so since the adoption was finalized 3 months ago. He was surprisingly good with her, patient, attentive, genuinely interested in her endless questions and observations. The Zhao family had been dealt with. I didn't ask for details, and Nikolai didn't offer them. All I knew was that they'd ceased to be a threat, their operations absorbed into Nikolai's empire, or eliminated entirely. The medical facility thrived under my partial management. Dr. Kim had been promoted, and I'd taken on more administrative duties that allowed me to work from home several days a week. It wasn't the career I'd imagined, but it was fulfilling in ways I hadn't expected. Sarah had finally accepted that my life had changed irrevocably. She visited sometimes, always accompanied by guards Nikolai insisted on, always leaving with more questions than answers. But she'd seen Lily flourish, seen the weight lift from my shoulders, and she'd made peace with choices she didn't fully understand. "What are you thinking about?" Nikolai's arms slid around my waist from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. "How different everything is from 6 months ago," I said honestly. "How I should probably regret all of this. But I don't." "Good." He pressed a kiss to my neck. "Because I'm never letting you regret it." There was still violence in his world. Still danger. Still moments when armed men appeared, and conversations happened in rapid Russian that I'd started to learn, but didn't yet fully understand. But there was also this afternoon sunshine, my daughter's laughter, strong arms around me, and the certain knowledge that I was protected, cherished, claimed by a man who would burn down the world to keep me safe. "I love you," I said, the words coming more easily each time I spoke them. "I know." His arms tightened. "You're mine, Emma. You always have been. From the moment I saw you in that hospital corridor looking exhausted and beautiful and so goddamn strong, and you always will be." It should have sounded like a threat. Instead, it sounded like a promise, and I was more than willing to keep it. Lily ran over, grabbing both our hands. "Papa! Mama! Come see! There's a butterfly on the roses, and it's huge!" We followed her across the manicured lawn, the three of us together, a family forged from violence and protection, and a love that made no logical sense but existed anyway, fierce and unbreakable. I'd traded one life for another, given up independence for security, normalcy for danger, freedom for protection, and somehow, impossibly, I'd found happiness in the exchange. Marcus had tried to destroy me. Instead, he'd pushed me toward the one man powerful enough to save me and possessive enough to never let me go. The irony wasn't lost on me. But as I watched Nikolai crouch down to examine the butterfly with Lily, his dangerous face softened by genuine affection for the daughter who'd stolen his heart as thoroughly as I had, I realized I didn't care about irony. I cared about this, about us, about the strange, violent, beautiful life we'd built from the ashes of my old one, and I wouldn't change a single thing. The sun set over the estate, painting the gardens in shades of gold and amber. Inside, dinner would be waiting, prepared by staff who'd become family, served in a dining room where violence and tenderness existed in equal measure. Later, after Lily was asleep, Nikolai and I would retreat to the bedroom we now shared, where he'd hold me like I was precious and claim me like I was his. Because I was his, completely, irrevocably, dangerously his. And I'd never been happier.